Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 11 wide receiver rankings. On today's episodes, I'm going to be going over the best and worst matchups for the wide receiver position as we enter Week 11 of the fantasy football season. Trying to give you my thoughts on, perhaps through the statistics, who has the most advantageous matchups and who's really, going to be really against it this coming week and going to have a difficult time scoring fantasy points, give you my perspective, my thoughts on that. And then after that, we're going to be going over the wide receiver rankings, my 1 through 36 wide receiver rankings, give you my perspective on how I think Week 11 will shake down. Then after that, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the Thursday night game because I will not be putting up a tight end or quarterback video until, after that game has already begun. So you'll get my thoughts on the Thursday night game. And, that'll basically be it. So that's the schedule. And before we begin, I just want to thank all of you who have continued to support. For those of you who have asked comments down below, I will get to you before. If it's time sensitive, I'll try to slip on through and find those questions and answer them. But usually Saturday is the best time for me to answer them. So before Sunday's games, they will be answered. But for those of you looking for time-sensitive answers, my Twitter, @Kirchhoff, hit me up there, and that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. But for those of you who haven't already, go down below, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content so that you can stay up to date and get all my videos in your box on a weekly basis. And that's basically it. So without further ado, let's begin. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Welcome. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. We're here feeling good. Hope you guys are all doing well. It's a tough life. California's burning to the ground. But as of right now, all is well. Thoughts and prayers to families who are struggling at the moment. If any of you happen to be, affected by those specific tragedies, I'm sorry. Hearts go out to you without a doubt. So before we get into anything else, I just want to explain the concept of this fantasy points against. So for those of you who are new to the channel, this basically is a statistic that is basically given to Yahoo Fantasy users. So if you do have a Yahoo Fantasy account, you can go, and when you go to your players, when you go to the matchup section, you can go and click on the team they're playing against. It's like a little thing. It'll say like Miami, MIA, or it'll say New Orleans, NO. You click on that, and it'll open up how many points that defense gives up to that specific position. So we're going to go over the wide receiver position for this coming week. So fantasy points against the defense that gives up the most points to the wide receiver position in fantasy. It's the New Orleans Saints. We've been talking about this for the last couple weeks, even with the terrible performance of the Cincinnati Bengals this past week. The New Orleans Saints are still giving up 42 points in half-point PPR scoring to the wide receiver position, giving up nearly 227 yards through the air, 1.8 touchdowns, just about 2 touchdowns a game to the wide receiver position. They play against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. But here's the thing. The Eagles, besides Alshon Jeffery, how much confidence do we have in the other wide receivers on this team? We know that they just newly acquired Golden Tate, but from Sunday Night Football, we were all able to see Golden Tate isn't really being used to the extent that we thought he was. He hasn't grasped this offense to the extent to where he can be out there and trusted in high-pressure situations. As of right now, Golden Tate, we saw Nelson Aguilar and Jordan Matthews be used a little bit more than him this past week. We know Zach Ertz is a very vital part of this passing offense, even though it doesn't really show within the scoring. As of right now, yes, the Eagles are going to have the most advantageous matchup of the week, but will they be able to act upon opportunity? I think Alshon Jeffery is a favorite to do so, but you'll see from my rankings a little bit later how I think or what I think about the rest of those guys. Number 2, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers giving up a lot of points to the wide receiver position. What a surprise. What a surprise. Giving up nearly 37 points in half-point PPR. I think Odell Beckham, Eli Manning, Sterling Shepard, they will be able to produce fantasy-wise. This past week against the 49ers defense, they had a decent week. I'm scared to say that Eli was good enough to now turn that game into another good performance, because you never know with Eli. Eli's very inconsistent. He's a very volatile player, and as of right now, Eli's fantasy production and his statistical production is very contingent on whether or not Odell Beckham ends up doing anything on a weekly basis. Getting those touchdowns are a huge boost for fantasy, and this coming week against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've got a very great opportunity. I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to do, but by all means, they should be able to score some points. They're going to be better than the offense of the Washington Redskins. They will put up more points than 16 points. I'm thinking, 4 touchdowns all across the board. 28 is a decent number. I'm thinking that's where we'll end up with the Giants this coming weekend. After that, the Atlanta Falcons, another team. I mean, the Falcons give up the 3rd most rushing yards that we saw yesterday and the 3rd most receiving yards. I mean, Amari Cooper is going to be great. You'll see it from my rankings. But other than that, from the Cowboys, what else is there? Cincinnati Bengals, they play against the Baltimore Ravens. We don't even know if Joe Flacco is playing this week. So for those of you considering playing John Brown, Michael Crabtree, Willie Snead, I would go ahead and just maybe just prepare for less than expected fantasy points, because if Robert Griffin or Lamar Jackson is the quarterback, I wouldn't expect much. Joe Flacco hasn't been great as of late either. So no matter who's really that starting quarterback, I'm not even sure if it's going to be a good game for them. Yes, they play against a very advantageous matchup, but I'm not sure if the Ravens are a team that can go ahead and turn this ship around as of this moment. That's basically that. The Philadelphia Eagles are giving up the 5th most points to the wide receiver position. I mean, that pretty much is only for Michael Thomas. I don't know if Brandon Marshall is going to play this week. I doubt he will be able to. Picking up that entire offense and being comfortable within it. Traquan Smith, catching 0 balls, having 0 targets from last week when they score 51. That is something to worry about. That's something that I am just concerned beyond all belief about. So besides Michael Thomas, there really isn't much that I could suggest from this offense at the wide receiver position. New York Jets, they are on bye week. The Packers, they give up the 7th most, which is absolutely great. Here's the thing. If you're a Tyler Lockett owner, you're pretty happy right now, right? He's caught nearly, I think it's 7 touchdowns this season. He's just playing beyond what we imagine him to play at. Catching the ball 3 to 4 times a game and having a touchdown every single game. To be honest, that's unsustainable in many different metrics, right? The chances of him continuously catching a touchdown every single game on a couple balls here and there, I mean, that's insane, right? But yet he continues to do it. He continues to find himself fantasy relevant. He continues to outplay Doug Baldwin, who has struggled all season long, whether it was from the injury in the beginning to coming back and trying to reestablish himself. He's looked healthier as we've progressed through the last couple weeks. And he's got a good matchup on Thursday Night Football, but he's coming off of a short week, tough game where they caught a loss. Will he be able to turn around Doug Baldwin? You'll see from my rankings in a little bit. Washington Redskins, as of the last couple weeks, they've been giving up a lot of yards to the wide receiver position. If it wasn't for the turnovers of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Buccaneers would have absolutely beat the Washington Redskins this past week. They had nearly, I think it was 500 total yards it was almost 500 total yards of offense and only 3, total points. I think the statistic, I don't know if I mentioned this, they had the most yards. What was it? They had the most yards since 19, God knows how long, with the least amount of points. 400 passing yards and only 3 points, that's a record in itself. So as of right now, I still think this offense is capable. I think Fitzmagic is capable. Chris Godwin had a great week this past week. Mike Evans, my goodness, Mike Evans, where have you gone, buddy? Where have you gone? Other than that, who else? There's always the Humphreys. There's the Deshaun Jackson. We'll talk about that in a little bit as we get into the rankings. Other than that, let's move on. Tennessee Titans give up a lot of yards to the wide receiver position. T.Y. Hilton. He's the only wide receiver within that offense that I have any moderate trust in starting. Other than him, it's pretty much all tight ends within that offense. Cleveland Browns are on a bye week. So, other than the top 10 best matchup for the wide receiver position thus far this season, Seattle, Pittsburgh, okay, Seattle, that's great. Davante Adams, MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Those are two good plays. You'll see it from the rankings. I trust them in the fact that, the Seahawks, they've struggled as of the last 5 weeks. They've been giving up a lot of points to the wide receiver position. Go check it out yourself. They have been getting burnt by a lot of teams, whether it was this past week with the Rams, the week prior with the Los Angeles Chargers, and then who did they play? Let me see this. I'm actually quite curious. Let's go ahead and pull this up, shall we? Okay. And then they played the Lions the week before, in which Marvin Jones went for 117, and Golden Tate had his 50, and Kerryon Johnson had his 70 receiving yards. And then the week before that against the Bears, you had Allen Robinson going for 83 yards and clearing that up with Taylor Gabriel contributing here and there. Where did I jump? No, why did I jump to the Bears? They didn't play the Bears. I'm sorry. Yeah, the last 3 weeks, or at least the last 5 weeks, they played the Rams twice, in which the Rams pretty much scorched them through the air. They played the Raiders once, which really wasn't a game. They played against Marvin Jones, who had a very good game, and then the Chargers offense, who was able to do decently through the air to the point where Keenan Allen had 124 receiving yards and lit the league on fire that week. So as of late, the receiving options, the number one wide receivers of respective teams have been doing well. So obviously Davante Adams will have a good week this week against the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. Moving on, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they go against Blake Bortles. I'm not sure how much of a worry that is. 49ers on a bye. Oakland giving up the 14th most. I mean, other than Larry Fitz, I really can't trust Christian Kirk because of the fact that I don't trust Josh Rosen to an extent to where I can guarantee he's going to get the ball out of his hands and not to David Johnson on a check down or to Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald, as of late, has been getting a lot of targets. We'll go into that a little bit more in the future of this episode. Moving on, Carolina Panthers, Chicago Bears, Rams, Detroit Lions, Broncos, Patriots. Okay, we get it. Those mid-tier teams, we got no worry, okay? So let's talk about the teams that really, give people a tough time. Specifically, the Jacksonville Jaguars on the bottom of our list down here. Where's my hand? Right? Yeah, right down there. Yeah, right down there. At 32, Jacksonville Jaguars, they're still not giving up a lot of points through the air to the wide receiver position. Now, technically, they gave up 28 points to Eric Ebron, which by all means, he's practically a wide receiver at this point. So this is a little bit skewed because, they have been giving up a lot of points through the air. But technically, if you're playing against them, number one wide receivers such as Antonio Brown are going to struggle. Obviously, you'll be able to beat them eventually as the game progresses. If you can run the ball heavily enough with James Conner this week, it'll demoralize that defense. What are they? They're 3-5, 3-6. I think they're 3-6. That's their record. They're not looking great. So as of right now, I think you can exploit that defense. The Bills on a bye week. The Cowboys, they're the third best against the wide receiver position. Not a surprise. They play against the Falcons though. What does that exactly do? I think Julio is pretty much matchup proof, but the other two, Mohamed Sanu and Ridley, that they might struggle. The Minnesota Vikings, that is going to be the biggest test, I think, of the week for many of us who have picked up or are considering playing Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson. I'll go into it a little bit as later on in this video when I talk about their rankings, but specifically, that defense is nothing to mess around with. They're coming off of a bye week, so they'll be fully healthy. Xavier Rhodes, one of the best corners in the NFL, he's going to be going up against Allen Robinson, and by all means, Allen Robinson's not going to be able to take a slant 40 yards to the house, just like he did this past week against that terrible secondary of the Detroit Lions, playing that man-up defense that just wasn't working for them. I'm not sure to what extent Allen Robinson or Anthony Miller will be successful, but it's going to be a tough one. Other than that, we have the Giants, who are pretty good against the wide receiver position to an extent. They're still going to give up a lot of points. I'm telling you, Fitzmagic's coming for them. The Baltimore Ravens are pretty tough. Here's the thing about the Baltimore Ravens. If AJ Green doesn't play this week, By all means, Tyler Boyd. Oh, goodness, Tyler. That team, I think the Ravens can win this game even without Flacco. Bold predictions over here. Don't quote me. Don't at me on Twitter unless I get it correct, okay? Thank you very much. Other than that, look, what's interesting, too? We have the Kansas City Chiefs with the 20 – they're giving up nearly 28 fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Just wait. Just wait till Monday night. We'll see that changed. Anyway, so that's basically it. Those are just a couple thoughts on the specific matchups. Do with this as you may. And otherwise, we're going to go ahead. We're going to move on to the wide receiver rankings for Week 11 of the fantasy football season. Here we go. All right, let's get a little bit more comfortable so we can get through this with some relative ease. Okay, so let's go ahead. And I just wanted to read off the top, okay, so that we kind of are all on the same page. So I'm looking at a specific statistic. The wide receivers with the most fantasy points thus far this season in half-point PPR scoring. Now, the number one wide receiver is Tyreek Hill. Specifically, that is because he is yet to take a bye week, and everyone underneath him has already taken a bye week, except for Bradin Cooks and Robert Woods, who are not too far behind, but are still in the top 10. So as of right now, Tyreek Hill, he is the number one wide receiver in half-point PPR scoring formats. Not much of a surprise considering he has 9 touchdowns, which is only second to Antonio Brown this season. And he's got a lot of yards, guys. He has got a lot of yards. He's got he has 301 more yards than Antonio Brown. Pretty insane. Other than that, Adam Thielen's number 2, Michael Thomas at 3, Davante Adams at 4, Hopkins at 5, Antonio Brown at 6, Odell Beckham at 7, Julio Jones at number 8 wide receiver, Robert Woods at the number 9, Cooks at 10, Sanders at 11, and Mike Evans at 12. Those are the top 12 wide receivers in half-point PPR scoring formats as of right now. And I just saw it. Tyreek Hill has another touchdown. He has is that a rushing touchdown this season? He also has a rushing touchdown this season. And he has a punt return. Shit, this guy just keeps scoring damn touchdowns, man. He's got the most touchdowns amongst all wide receivers. Plain and simple. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to get right into it. We're talking about the rankings for Week 11 for the wide receiver position in fantasy football. Number 1 is Michael Thomas. Why exactly is Michael Thomas number 1? Well, as I mentioned a little bit before, he goes against the fifth worst, I guess. Yeah, you could say. Defense against the wide receiver position. The Philadelphia Eagles are nearly giving up, here's the statistic, nearly giving up 35 points in half-point PPR scoring to the wide receiver position. And by all means, Michael Thomas, as of the last 2 weeks, the 12 reception, 200-yard game, and this past week with 8 receptions, 70 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. As of the last 2 weeks, 20 receptions, 281 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. Dude's been an absolute monster. I think he'll continue to stay consistent on that pace. Why? Because him and Drew Brees, they're matchup proof. The run game is they're getting to a stage of this New Orleans Saints offense where they're going to have to completely use all efforts to stop the run. Because Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, they're just as capable as each other in scoring the ball. And if they continue to run defenses over with this pretty good offensive line, they're going to have to use a lot of the defenses, at least, are going to use a lot of their efforts to try to stop the run, helping out Michael Thomas, get him open a little bit more with softer coverage, where corners have to back off a little bit more. So as of right now, Michael Thomas, you're my number 1 for this week. I like the matchup. I like your consistent performances as of late. And to be honest, your performances in the next couple weeks are going to be good. Just to read out the matchups, right? They play Philadelphia this week. Then they play Atlanta the next week, which is the 3rd most points to the wide receiver position. They play against Dallas, which is a tougher secondary, but he'll be fine. Then they play against Tampa Bay, Carolina, Pittsburgh, and then Carolina again. Rest of the season, at least the next couple weeks, for those of you trying to get into those playoffs, Michael Thomas is going to be a guy that is absolutely insane. He's going to help your lineup. He's going to help you get into that next step, into the next level, hopefully get you guys in the playoffs. All right, let's talk about my number 2 wide receiver of the week. That is Odell Beckham Jr. Coming off a pretty good performance against the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to grab as many passes as I thought he was. Only 4 receptions, yet he had 11 targets. So the target count and the target share was there, which is what we want, all things considered. Thus far this season, he has been above 10 targets every single game except for one in which he had 9 targets. So his target count is always going to be consistently there. We love it, right? No matter how much he cries on the sideline, it's all good because fantasy-wise, he's going to get the ball thrown to him. And he's going to, honestly, he gets open a lot. All right, Odell Beckham is a special wide receiver. And if you put, just imagine, okay? Let's just imagine really quickly while we're sitting here. Imagine if you had Odell Beckham on the New Orleans Saints. Let's say you had Odell Beckham on, give or take, the Green Bay Packers, right? On the other side of Michael Thomas or on the other side of Davante Adams. Just imagine how good he would be. Just imagine how good he would be. Oh my goodness. The dude is still the 7th best wide receiver in fantasy right now. Right? He's still almost he has 860 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns on 65 receptions this season. But just imagine. Whew. Either way, this week plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary, which is the second worst in the NFL to the wide receiver position in half-point PPR scoring. He's going to have a great week. Hopefully, the confidence of that victory on Monday night will lead to Eli Manning building a little bit of confidence, his team moving the ball a little bit more, and giving themselves more of an opportunity, hopefully picking up another win for themselves. But either way, I still like Odell Beckham this week compared to a lot of the receivers in the league. He's my number 2. Number 3, we have DeAndre Hopkins coming off the bye week, playing against the Washington Redskins. By all means, in the last couple weeks, have given up a lot of points to the wide receiver position. And to be honest, DeAndre Hopkins is just as good, right? As anybody. He is the number 1 wide receiver within his offense. He's a guy that is going to, without a doubt, continue to get his receptions, make them hit those insane plays. Let's go ahead and see this real quick. DeAndre Hopkins, what is he questionable with? What the heck is this? Why does he have a questionable tag if it's not going to tell me why he's questionable? Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Just scare us for no reason, I guess. Either way, why is Adam Thielen considered questionable? What the heck is this about? Back and calf was limited Wednesday. He'll be fine. All right, don't worry about him. Let's go back to DeAndre Hopkins. So DeAndre Hopkins, the number 1 wide receiver of the Texans. Going into a Josh Norman matchup, I'm not really afraid of it, to be honest. I'm actually kind of happy with the matchup. No matter what they throw at DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be fantasy relevant on a weekly basis. He is a guy that is honestly matchup proof with the amount of targets and the opportunity he continues to get. The last 2 weeks that we saw him, he had 16 receptions for 187 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. Obviously not to the receiving caliber of a Michael Thomas, but to be honest, from what he's been able to do in the specific matchups that he's played in, he's as impressive as a top-tier wide receiver can be. He's my number 3 this week into a matchup that, to be honest, many people may question. Is the Washington defense that's carrying their team? Yes, it may be carrying their team, but they are vulnerable against the passing game, and that's exactly what Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans want to go after, and that's what they want to do on a weekly basis. So he's my number 3. Number 4, we have Antonio Brown of the Pittsburgh Steelers this coming week. All right, so yes, he gets to go against Jalen Ramsey. Okay, now why is this specifically special? Well, they lost to the Jaguars twice last season. Once during the season where they were absolutely embarrassed, and once in the divisional game before they got into the AFC Championship. No. Who did they beat? No. They lost in the AFC Championship. So yeah, the divisional game prior to that. Let me go ahead and let's find this. Let me see. What was Antonio Brown capable of accomplishing? All right, so last season, during the regular season, Ben Roethlisberger threw 5 picks against this defense. Well, this defense isn't to that capability or caliber anymore. But a statistic I wanted to throw out, okay? Antonio Brown was able to have 10 receptions and 157 yards last season against this secondary, with Jalen Ramsey back there, with A.J. Boye back there. So am I really concerned about starting Antonio Brown when he has proven that he can torch Jalen Ramsey? And Jalen Ramsey, even though he comes out in those press conferences, which was earlier this season, right now he's hush quiet. He's not talking about nobody, right? Because his team himself, they're not playing great. But earlier on in the season, when he was coming out talking crap about everybody, he had nothing but nice words to say about Antonio Brown because he knows Antonio Brown has worked him in the past. Antonio Brown this week, I expect him to have a very good week, but I expect him to, the offense is going to spread around the ball. Juju Smith, Vance McDonald, James Conner, they're all going to be contributors. Conner, I think, was a full participant at practice today, so no worry about his concussion or concussion. I don't know. I don't even know if it was a real concussion. But either way, Antonio Brown, you're my number 4 receiver. Should be a great play. Number 5, we have Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons playing against the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, well, this is the way I see it. Okay, the Cowboys should technically, because of how bad the Atlanta Falcons defense is, they should have a very good week offensively. Now, where does that leave Atlanta? That leaves them either catching up or setting the tempo. They're either going to have to come out and score often and early, or they're going to have to catch up. Either way, the Atlanta Falcons will be using Julio Jones at a premium. He's caught 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, 1 each game. This coming week, there's a very good chance he probably catches another touchdown, depending on his target share, his opportunity. He's one of the top guys in the NFL. But the thing that's unfortunate is that Julio, where are you at, Julio? Where are you ranked amongst all wide receivers? Ooh, Leo. In the last 2 weeks, okay, just in the last couple weeks. All right, I'm going to read out the stats for the last 4 weeks. 4 weeks of Julio. 14 targets, 10 receptions, 144 yards. 12 targets, 9 receptions, 104 yards. 10 targets, 7 receptions, 121 and a touchdown. 11 targets, 7 receptions, 107 and a touchdown. The dude has had 400-yard games back-to-back, 2 touchdowns, 10 targets plus every single game. Can we stop him? I don't think so. He already has 1,000 receiving yards on the season. Amongst wide receivers, he has the most receiving yards. What a surprise. Actually, no. Wow, he's actually above Adam Thielen. Holy moly. He's an animal, guys. Oh, my God, Julio. Anyway, he's my number 5. I trust him no matter what. He's matchup proof. He'll continue to be consistent. He's my number 5. All right, number 6, we have Adam Thielen coming off the bye week. Here's the thing. Adam Thielen, he's going to be great. They're playing against the Bears defense. My only concern is the Bears pass rush and this Vikings offensive line. Is there going to be an issue with that? Or can the Vikings supplement that with using the run game with Dalvin Cook in order to stop this pass rush from getting after him so consistently? Because if teams know you're going to only pass the ball, their defensive line, they're going to pin their ears back and they're going to come after you. If they can supplement it with running the ball at a consistent pace and being pretty efficient on the ground, then we won't have to worry about that. But as of right now, Adam Thielen, I expect him to have his 80, maybe even 100 yards and a touchdown. I expect it. But comparatively to these other guys, they don't have to compete with Stefon Diggs on the other side of the field. Stefon Diggs can be just as relevant and just as good on a weekly basis. The guys above, Hopkins, Julio, Brown. Brown is the closest one with Juju. Beckham and Thomas, they don't really have to worry about the other number 1 wide receiver across the field. So Thielen, just a little bit of a downgrade, but honestly, you're starting him. He's a man. He's an animal. He's my number 6. Number 7, we have Devontae Parker. No, not Devontae Parker. Get out of here, Parker. You're trash. Go back home. Davante Adams. Okay, we got the broom out. We pushed away Devontae Parker. We're back to Davante Adams of the Pittsburgh. No, why? What are we doing? Okay, we're gonna restart this. All right, here we go. Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers for this coming week, playing against the Seattle Seahawks defense, giving up the 11th most points to the wide receiver position in half-point PPR, scoring. The number 4 wide receiver in fantasy thus far, already has 9 receiving touchdowns, and we're just a little bit past halfway through the season. We're in week 11 now. Davante Adams is probably going to have another 6 touchdowns this season. He'll probably have a touchdown in this game. I expect him to do so. I expect him to have very good numbers. The number 1 wide receivers of the last couple weeks, Bradin Cooks, Keenan Allen, and Marvin Jones, the last 3 weeks have had fantastic weeks against the Seattle defense. So number 1 wide receivers are hurting them a lot. And I expect Davante Adams to be just as good. He's my number 7 for this coming week. Short week, but Thursday night I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of the episode. Number 8, we have Tyreek Hill. Now, as I mentioned before, Tyreek Hill is the number 1 wide receiver with scoring in half-point PPR formats. This coming week, he plays against the defense of the Rams. By all means, here's the thing, okay? We can either expect one of two things to occur. We expect 10 points in which he has a bad game, or we can expect 25-plus points in which he has a great game. I don't think there's any medium. I don't think we're going to find him catching and scoring 17.5 points. Has he even done that this season? He did 17.5 once, okay? Or 17.1, okay. So twice. So here are your 3 options. You get 10 points, you get 17.5, or you get 30. I'm okay with that. The gamble, I'm going to take it with 100% of the time, without a doubt in my mind. Why? Because he's the number 1 wide receiver on this offense. They continue to use him. They continue to target him. And to be honest, I don't know if the Rams have an answer for him in stopping that speed. He's going to be a consistent guy that they are going to throw the ball to. This past week had 10 targets, which was the most in the last couple weeks, which is obviously the big difference on getting him some fantasy points. But as of right now, comparatively to these other guys, they get more targets. They have shown to be more consistent. Yes, Tyreek Hill has those boom games where he carries your entire team on the week, but then he's also had those bust games where he shows up and only puts up 8 to 10 fantasy points, which can hurt us a lot. That is why he's number 8. I'm still confident in him. I think he's going to have a good week, and you should start him. All right, number 9, we have Bradin Cooks, a guy that is sneakily in the top 10. Been fantastic thus far this season. Pretty much the same thing as Tyreek Hill. He is a guy with immense speed. He's the number 1 wide receiver on his team, and he continues to perform. This coming week against Kansas City Chiefs defense, I expect him to have a great matchup. As of late, just the target counts. 8 targets, 12 targets. In the last 2 weeks, 16 receptions for 214 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. He's been fantastic as of late. I can continue to see him blowing up and exploding and scoring fantasy points due to the injury of Cooper Kupp. So he'll be asked to do a little bit more, which is, by all means, for us fantasy owners, that is a fantastic thing to see. Unfortunately, Cooper, rest in peace, but you'll be back next season better than ever. But Bradin Cooks, you're my number 9 this week. I have a lot of confidence in him. Number 10, we have Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, where did you go in the beginning of the year? And welcome back. That's pretty much it. Where's Allen? Where are you, Keenan Allen? Here we are. Goodness, Keenan Allen. You haven't even scored more than Cooper Kupp, and Cooper Kupp has been out for so many weeks. Man, Keenan Allen in the beginning of the season, besides week 1, didn't look good. But in the last 2 weeks, especially this last week, was able to salvage it with that end of the first half touchdown. But I'll take it, 18.2 points, 14.7 points in the last 2 weeks. I'll take it, to be honest. This coming week, he plays against the Denver Broncos defense. The reason why I have him at my number 10 is because the Denver Broncos defense, we know that their secondary can be challenging at times for wide receivers, and especially because Phillip Rivers and this Chargers offense, they've become more of a, hey, we're going to run the ball, and we're going to be successful at that, and then we'll eventually assess the passing game, play with the play action, and then feed Keenan Allen a couple dump-offs here and there. So that hurts Keenan Allen a little bit, but as of right now, I still see him as a top 10 wide receiver, a wide receiver 1 for this coming week. He's my number 10. Fire him up. He's a great play. Number 11, we have Stefon Diggs. As I was mentioning before, there's a reason why Adam Thielen's at 6 is because Stefon Diggs is going to be able to produce this coming week. Yes, we didn't see the offense of the Detroit Lions excel to the pace that we thought they would, but as soon as the fourth quarter hit and garbage time showed up, Golladay was able to do some stuff, and they were able to score some points. But here's the way I see it. You can either cover one or the other. You're either going to stop Adam Thielen or you're going to stop Stefon Diggs. You can't stop both of them. I don't think it's possible. I don't think a team in the NFL has the ample secondary or defense to be able to stop them. So as of right now, Stefon Diggs, you're my number 11 for this coming week. You're practically a wide receiver 1 on the other side of the field from Adam Thielen. Hopefully this bye week has serviced you well from your injury. You can come back and look good. But if he has any hiccups this week, when it comes to the injury, I will update you guys and I'll readjust his ranking. But as of right now, hopefully he's fully healthy, ready to go. He's my number 11. Number 12, we have Robert Woods. Also from the injury to Cooper Kupp, he will get an automatic boost in target and production. We know Josh Reynolds will be on this offense getting the reps for Cooper Kupp, but I still think a guy like Robert Woods is going to continue to get his targets. I don't think that's going anywhere as of late. His target count hasn't been great, and his performances haven't been great because he hasn't caught that touchdown. Can this be the week? We have a 64-point over-under within this game, and I think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns thrown around on Monday night. So I think Robert Woods has an opportunity. He probably has one of the best opportunities he had all season to catch a touchdown. This is it. I expect it to happen. He's my number 12. Number 13, we have T.Y. Hilton. Yes, T.Y. Hilton came off a pretty tough matchup and was decent, right? He scored 8.99 fantasy points and half-point PPR scoring, which was pretty good considering he was going against Jalen Ramsey in that tough secondary. This coming week, he plays against either, it's probably going to be Malcolm Butler, Adoree Jackson combination. He's going to feast. I'm telling you right now, these corners are not that good. Andrew Luck has been squeaky clean as of late. We know he likes to throw it to the tight end position. The Tennessee Titans, they will be keying on that. They're going to be covering the Ebrons, the Jack Doyles, the Mo Alley Coxes of the world. And they're going to leave T.Y. Hilton off on that island. And T.Y. Hilton is going to find himself some fantastic production this week. I think just because, yes, he has been targeted very few times in the last couple of weeks, I don't personally have a fear on playing him. I think he's going to be good this week. I know for a fact these corners are not that good. We have seen it in the past. They have struggled. This past week was a completely different story. I don't even know what kind of Patriots team that was that went out there. It didn't look like the Patriots. I'll tell you that much. Next time we see the Patriots, while we're on this subject, okay, but either way, let me finish my thought. T.Y. Hilton, he's going to have a good week, without a doubt in my mind. Last week, I expected him to be a little bit less than par, but this week he should be fine. Now, what I was thinking was, who do the Patriots play next? There it is. They play the Jets next week. By all means, guys. When the Patriots get their ass kicked, they turn around and they look in the mirror. They ask themselves, was that the best? They realize it really wasn't. The Jets, next week, in Week 12, are going to get destroyed so badly. You better start all of your Patriots. I'm not kidding. I can tell you right now, it is going to be an absolute blowout. I'm thinking 45 points minimum. Minimum 45 points. I can see it already. Brady with 3 touchdown passes. Just wait. 2 to Gronk. Just wait. All right, we're moving on to number 14, Mike Evans. Now, one of you in the comment section, I forget your name to be honest, because there's just so many of you and I'm just trying to go through them. But thank you for your questions either way. Appreciate it. Hope I'm helping you guys out as much as I possibly can. So one of you asked, what are your thoughts on Mike Evans? Are you worried going forward? Here's the thing about Mike Evans. He's earlier on in the season was fantastic. But as of late, by all means, what is this Mike Evans? 10 targets, 1 reception, 6 targets, 3 reception in the last 2 weeks, has only put up 8.7 fantasy points. That is not the Mike Evans we drafted. That is not the guy that we want to have as our number 1 wide receiver. We can't send a guy out there as our number 1 wide receiver and he get only 6 points. I might as well go pick up a bum off the damn waivers and play him at my number 1 wide receiver slot. I can't trust a guy like this. But to be honest, it's hard not to start him. Even though, the matchup technically is difficult, I have to start him. I've drafted him to start him. I'm never going to leave this guy on my bench. When in doubt, you have to play your best players. And that's the case here. With Mike Evans, I think they're going to have to turn around. They're going to fix this. The Fitzmagic bus, if it ends up breaking down at the side of the road and, Dirk Cutter comes out, checks the engine, it's smoking, they're going to go ahead and they're going to watch the other bus drive by. It's Jameis Winston in the back of an Uber doing some stuff, no comment. And then they're going to get into that car. But as of right now, I think they're going to be able to flip this around. I don't even know what I just said 10 seconds ago, but I don't. Okay, anyway. Mike Evans this week, I expect him to be decent, hopefully. Either way, you have to play him. It's without a doubt you have to play him. He's Mike Evans. He's a number 1 wide receiver on a number 1 offense in a game that should be a shootout. I couldn't see myself leaving him on the bench at all. All right, we're moving on to number 15. We have Kenny Golladay. Now, this is under the assumption that Marvin Jones does not play. Now, is Marvin Jones going to play? By all means, I have no clue. Latest I heard, he had a bone bruise in his leg. Bone bruises are nothing to F with. He did not practice earlier today with a supposed knee injury. I expect him probably not to play this week. Why would they force him to play? Especially he left the game this past week. I'm not sure if he's ready to come back per se as of right now. So Kenny Golladay obviously gets the boost. I mean, Golladay, we've seen him be fantastic this season. And as of late, especially once he left that game on Sunday, Kenny Golladay saw the most targets he's seen all season long since week 1. He saw 13 targets, 6 receptions, 78 receiving yards, and a touchdown. And if he's the number one wide receiver playing against this Carolina defense, we saw the Carolina defense get absolutely torched this past week. They're going to be in Detroit, and I think Matthew Stafford will be able to find his only target really on the field other than, a Riddick or a Kerryon Johnson out of the backfield. So Kenny Golladay, you've been brought up to the number 15 spot, assuming Marvin Jones doesn't play because, he didn't practice today. I guess we'll know by Saturday whether he's clear to go or not. But as of right now, Kenny Golladay, assuming Marvin Jones is out, he's my number 15. Number 16, we have Alshon Jeffery. As I mentioned before, they play against the Saints, who've given up the most points to the wide receiver position. By all means, Jeffery should be good this week, just due to the matchup and because, by all means, they're defending champions. It is without a doubt the Eagles are defending champions. They're a fantastic team. They're going to have to prove themselves in the next couple weeks. They've got some tough games, especially going against these Saints that are, if not the best NFL team right now, and a team that might be in their way going into the playoffs. So as of right now, can we see Alshon Jeffery produce? As of late, hasn't been fantastic. He's had some pretty difficult matchups, right? Against Jalen Ramsey in London. Wasn't a fantastic matchup. Wasn't able to do much this past week against the Cowboys, which have a stout secondary, a team that's pretty good against the pass. Only had 8 targets, 4 receptions, 48 yards. We saw Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz pretty much be the number 1 and 2 this past week. I still think this week he'll have a good opportunity and he'll find himself in the end zone with a touchdown. Hopefully at best, but at worst, he's going to get his 10 plus targets and he's going to be fantasy relevant. Number 17, we have Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, so if Antonio Brown is locked up, Juju Smith will find himself some fantasy relevance. That's just how it works. But this past week, this is my only concern. This past week, on the first play from scrimmage for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he caught a 75-yard touchdown. Now, if we do the math in half-point PPR, that's 8 points for the catch and the yards and 6 points for the touchdown. So that's 14 points automatically on the first play. Now, how many points did he score for the rest of the game? I think it was 3 more points. He scored like 16, 17 points. For the rest of the game, he scored 3 more points. That is my worry. I've said it earlier on in the season. Juju Smith is a boom or bust kind of guy. Sometimes he can boom and score you that points, and boom, he's there. Otherwise, he's going to methodically have to catch balls here and there throughout the game in order to be relevant, and sometimes won't end up being relevant. So this coming week, I think he'll have a decent week because a lot of the defense is going to be keyed on stopping the run on Connor and focusing on Antonio Brown. And they're going to leave Juju on an island, and hopefully Ben Roethlisberger will be able to exploit some of that defense. I expect him to have a good week. He's my number 17. All right, number 18, we have Emmanuel Sanders coming off the bye, playing against the Los Angeles Chargers. Should be a good matchup. Emmanuel Sanders, you are the number 1 wide receiver. Even with Demaryius Thomas gone, what were you able to do the other night against the Texans? Had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 47 yards. Not great, right? The depth of target, not fantastic. But then again, Emmanuel Sanders is that guy that's going to be running over the middle, catching the ball, trying to be shifty here and there. I just like to see a little bit of an uptick in targets. By all means, you can run the ball with Phillip Lindsay, but you're going to have to feed the ball to Emmanuel Sanders eventually, especially if you want to stay competitive in these games. If not, go ahead, cut him next year because he's going to be a very pretty penny to pay for. But either way, I like him this coming week against the Chargers defense. I expect him to have a very good matchup, and he should be decent here. Let's move on to the last, 18 names I want to talk about. We have about 15 minutes to go over these guys. So we're going to go rapid fire. I've been mumbling and jumbling for, the last 30 minutes. So let's see what I can do in the last 15, shall we? All right, we have Amari Cooper at number 19. As I mentioned before, he plays the Atlanta Falcons defense. And here's the thing about the Atlanta Falcons defense. They give up the third most points to the wide receiver position in fantasy football, half-point PPR scoring. Amari Cooper, as of late, has been pretty good. Against the, if I'm not mistaken, against the Eagles, he wasn't terrible. But the Eagles matchup is a little bit soft. In the last 2 weeks, he scored 14.5 and 10 points, 10.5 points in half-point PPR. This past week, had 10 targets, 75 receiving yards on 6 receptions. By all means, he's the number one wide receiver. He's used at the amount that he really should have been used in Oakland. In Oakland, he was getting 1 target, one catch, 1 target, 5 targets, 3 targets. That's not what you want in a number one wide receiver. You need to give him the ball, and he needs to see multiple targets in order to give him into a groove. He'll have that opportunity this week against a very soft defense in the Atlanta Falcons. I expect him to have a good week. He's my number 19. All right, number 20, we have Corey Davis, who's coming off 2 monster weeks. Corey Davis, you had that one good game, and you beat the defending champions, and you put up a lot of yards against the Eagles. Then you disappeared for literally, 5 weeks? And then you've reclaimed yourself. You had 10 targets each of the last 2 weeks, 6 catches, 7 catches. This past week had 125 receiving yards and a touchdown. I think he'll be able to be a very good wide receiver too for this coming week against the Indianapolis Colts. Reasoning behind that, well, to be honest, if Mariota is feeling himself and he's feeling good, he's healthy, he's ready to go, that only makes everyone around him better, right? That's just how it works. When the quarterback is feeling good, he's healthy, and he's ready to go, the wide receivers, the running backs, the offensive line, they're going to prosper from it. Now, on top of that, Corey Davis, he is the number one wide receiver here. I mean, who are they going to throw the ball to? Tyrod Taylor? Come on. Really? As of late, it's Corey Davis all the time. Mariota, if he can get him the ball, which I think he's going to be able to consistently, he should be good this week. He's my number 20. We have number 21, Larry Fitzgerald, playing against the Raiders defense. Good old Raiders. Throwing games just to get number 1 overall picks. We'll see how that works. Larry Fitzgerald this week. Larry Fitz, as of the last couple of weeks, has been pretty decent. He's been, just like Corey Davis, just like I mentioned, he's been racking in targets as the number 1 wide receiver, and that's exactly what you want to see as a fantasy owner. In the last 2 weeks, 8 targets, 12 targets, 10 targets. This past week, obviously, was a little bit of a disappointment against the Chiefs, but to be honest, it's no big deal. He plays against the Oakland Raiders this week. I expect him to have a very, very good game. And to be honest, he's Larry Legend for a reason. I have trust in him, and I believe he's going to be very fantasy relevant this week. He's my number 21. Number 22, we have Tyler Lockett. I can't ignore the fact this man keeps scoring fantasy points. By all means, Tyler Lockett, please, at least catch like a 75-yard bomb. Just top us off in the beginning, and we'll leave you alone. He's literally caught 7 touchdowns this season, like I mentioned before. But this past week, 5 receptions on 6 targets, had that very nice catch at the back of the end zone, turned around, adjusted midair, caught the ball, came down, handed the ball off to Mayweather, and bada boom, ended his week pretty good. 16 points and half-point PPR scoring. Plays against a pretty advantageous matchup in the Green Bay Packers defense. Should be a high-scoring Thursday night game. I'll give you a little bit more of my thoughts on that as the episode gets to the end. But as of right now, Tyler Lockett, you're my number 22. You're the number 1 wide receiver on the Seahawks. I trust you. All right, number 23, we have Marquez Valdes-Scantling. All right, so here's the thing. He came out this last week. I put a lot of hype into him, right? And a lot of us did, and for the right reasons. He's looked good this season. He is the number 2 wide receiver. Geronimo Allison, done. He's on the IR. Randall Cobb this week, he is completely out. He is the number 2 wide receiver, plain and simple. The only thing was, later on in that game, after Aaron Jones started plowing the defense, the game really didn't turn into, hey, we need to pass and score the ball. The game script wasn't there. It was just kill the clock, let's run it out, we're playing against Miami. This coming week, it's going to be different. I expect Valdes-Scantling to be used more and more. When you're playing opposite of Davante Adams in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, I expect touchdowns, I expect targets, I expect yards. And I expect him to be a good wide receiver this week. You should have the confidence because I do. And the Seahawks, they give up a decent amount of points. We looked at earlier when it comes to statistics, giving up the 11th most points to the wide receiver position, half-point PPR, comparatively to other teams. As of late, they haven't been great against receivers. So I could see, Adams and Scantling having good weeks this week. So that is it. He's my number 23. Number 24, Allen Robinson. As I mentioned before, it really depends on how Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Nagy, this offense approaches the Vikings defense, because we know Allen Robinson, he is going to pull coverage from Xavier Rhodes. It is a given. That is the fact. Now, is Xavier Rhodes good enough to stop him from being fantasy relevant? I'm not sure to this extent. I've seen players, to be honest, score fantasy points on Xavier Rhodes. I've seen Davante Adams do it earlier this season. It just depends whether or not, he's force-fed. Because if Mitchell Trubisky isn't afraid of a defense, just like he was this past week, if he comes out and he's on fire and he's feeling himself and he's feeling dangerous, a.k.a. Baker Mayfield woke up, said, today I'm feeling dangerous, comes out and completely kills the Falcons. If he comes out feeling dangerous, he's going to be fantasy relevant. He'll be able to catch a couple balls here and there, hopefully find himself in the end zone. I like him this week. Well, he's a number one wide receiver, and compared to the guys below him, they're all either wide receiver 2s or wide receiver 1s on poor offensive teams. That's basically it. So he's my number 24. Number 25, we have Tyler Boyd, who I thought was going to be decent this past week. A lot of you came out and you said, hey, listen, Andrew, I understand you're hyped for Tyler Boyd. I understand you're thinking he's going to be good without AJ Green. But listen to us. We know, we've seen the Bengals play. If Tyler Boyd is not left in the slot, he will not prosper at all. And by all means, you guys were correct. Many of you who were in the comments, preaching it, good on you guys. You guys knew it. You saw it from the get-go that they weren't going to have a successful week against a very advantageous matchup. So here's the way I see it. If Tyler Boyd wasn't able to be relevant against the Saints, I don't really see him doing much against the Ravens, to be honest. I honestly don't. Now, there is a chance that AJ Green plays this week. My rankings, as of right now, I'm not expecting him to play, but there's a good chance he plays. Marvin Jones said, we expect him to play this week. We'll see about that. I doubt it. You don't really have to play him against the Ravens. You're going to lose anyway. Tyler Boyd, he's my number 25. Hopefully can find himself some fantasy relevance this week. But it's a tough matchup. And if he's not good, unless he's in the slot, we've got problems. And I wouldn't expect him to play well this week if he's ending up out wide and against a pretty good secondary. So he's my number 25. Number 26, we have Sammy Watkins. Now, if your over-under on the Monday night game is 64 points, then they're expecting, a 31 to 34 game, right? They expect at least 5 touchdowns by each team. At least, right? So here's the way I see it. Sammy Watkins, you're the number 2 wide receiver on this team. You haven't been fully healthy as of late, but to be honest, they gave you the week off. You should be looking good for this coming week. And I honestly think that Sammy Watkins can be a guy that takes the top off the defense. He can make up his fantasy week within one play. And if he's completely healthy and he's ready to go this week, which I think he is, Foot expected to return for week 11. If he's able to play, it's a Monday night game, so he should have enough time to heal it up. I like him at 26. Number 27, Demaryius Thomas. Getting a little bit more acclimated within this offense. I expect him to get the targets that Will Fuller was getting. So that's a pretty good amount, to be honest. So, even though he's an older gentleman and he's been in the league for a while, he's quite a veteran. But honestly, it could go either way. I expect him to be pretty decent, but then again, he wasn't fantastic all season long. I'm not sure how much the offensive change makes him more fantasy relevant. He's a wide receiver 3 for me this week. Number 28, we have John Brown. Here's the thing about John Brown and the Ravens offense. Like I mentioned before, if Joe Flacco's not playing and it's, Robert Griffin and Lamar Jackson, I'm a little skeptical on whether it's going to be a shit show or not. And even if Joe Flacco plays, John Brown hasn't looked good as of late. But here's the thing. They're an offensive team that is going to be playing against a very bad defense. If and hopefully whoever the quarterback is ends up throwing the ball up in the air and letting it go deep, John Brown can get under it, score a touchdown. He's my number 28. Number 29, Anthony Miller. When Allen Robinson is on that one side of the field getting locked up by Xavier Rhodes, and those of us who start Anthony Miller this week as a wide receiver 3, we'll be just hoping Anthony Miller is going to pull all the attention, all the targets from Mitch Trubisky on one side of the field. Ends up being some pretty good fantasy points at the end of the week. I can see that happening. Everybody focusing on one side, focusing on Tariq Cohen, maybe even Trey Burton, and they forget about Anthony Miller. It's a good opportunity. He's my number 29. Number 30 is Devin Funchess. Now, here's the thing about Devin Funchess. He hasn't done shit for the last 3 weeks. Now, does that mean, hey, Andrew, he hasn't done anything in the last couple weeks. Can I trust him? Exactly. I can't trust him. I don't trust him at all. Not even a little bit. I mean, look at these stats. Let me go ahead and read these for you guys. Come on, Funch. You got to be kidding me, dude. Whew, these stats. 3 targets, 3 receptions, 27 yards. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 44 yards. 5 targets, 3 receptions, 32 yards. Great. He gets the targets, and he catches the balls. Great. He's been 10 yards per reception. Fantastic. That looks great. But guess what? I expect 10 targets per game. If Corey Davis can get 10 targets, where the hell are Devin Funchess' targets? There you go. If he's not going to get his targets, and, he's playing against a pretty soft secondary right now, right? They play against the Lions, who just got torched by Allen Robinson. Please, Devin Funchess, do something. But then again, he's not very trustable, so we'll see what happens. But either way, as a flex, maybe in a PPR, wide receiver 3, he's a pretty decent play. Has decent upside. All right, 31, we have Sterling Shepard into a pretty decent matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He wasn't able to do much, but he still did catch that touchdown this past week. Found himself some fantasy relevancy. I think a couple plays here and there, a couple deep bombs, which we've seen him catch in the past couple 50-yard plays here or there. A couple plays out of the backfield, some shifty jet sweeps and stuff. He can figure out a way to find himself as a pretty decent wide receiver 3. I like him this week in the matchup. To be honest, we've seen some teams really torch the defense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think there's a good chance the Giants end up putting up a lot of points. As of right now, my number 32, we have Doug Baldwin. Here's the thing about Doug Baldwin. I don't know if I can trust him. Trust is the question within all these guys at the wide receiver 3 spot. Can you trust them to put up the fantasy points you expect them to play with? We expect Doug Baldwin to be, from what we've seen in the past, we've seen him be a 15-point guy. But as of late, he's a 5 to 7-point guy. And until he has that big week, he's pretty much, he's under investigation, okay? Until he has 3 or at least 2, at least he has 1 good performance. Let him catch 1 touchdown, and I'll be ready. Until then, you can sit on the bench. 33, we have Courtland Sutton. Here's the thing. They want to implement him more within this offense, right? You got to get him some targets. He's a young guy. He's going to be the next Demaryius Thomas within that offense. He needs to see targets. He didn't see it last time against the Texans. It's a pretty tough defense. Playing against the Chargers this week, they're going to have to catch up. They're going to have to throw the ball. Sutton will be a good option for this week. Number 34, we have Michael Crabtree. To be honest, goodness gracious, Michael Crabtree, what are you doing? I don't really trust Crabtree, but to an extent, he's going to have to catch a ball or two. And I think in the red zone, no matter who the quarterback is, Crabtree is the way to go. He could end up catching himself a touchdown, getting about 8 points in fantasy off 2 catches. It's possible. I could see that happening. He's 34. Number 35, Chris Godwin. The number 2 wide receiver on this team, whether it comes to snaps, targets, and yards. He really is. And as of late, he's really been the number 1 comparatively to Mike Evans. Anybody on this team has been the number 1 compared to Mike Evans in the last 2 weeks. Chris Godwin this week has a decent matchup. While everyone's keyed on locking up, Javoris, Jackrabbit, Jenkins is on. Mike Evans, no one's going to really be paying attention to Godwin. He'll find himself some relevancy. And the last wide receiver I wanted to mention is Tyrell Williams, a guy that's been pretty good as of late. No matter whether he catches a touchdown or not, he's finding himself to be fantasy relevant because he continues to get those targets. Mike Williams, the Williams brothers on this Chargers offense, in the last 3 weeks has had 3 catches. Great. We don't care for that. We want more targets. We want more receptions. This past week had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 40 yards. As long as he's getting those targets, he'll get more and more comfortable. At least I'll get more and more comfortable within starting him at a wide receiver 3 spot, especially when we're expecting the big play. If we're not able to get it, that's fine. But if I'm expecting a big play and I don't get it, okay, at least he has the targets to be decent enough with it. Either way, those are my rankings. As of right now, at the end of this video, I kind of want to give you my thoughts on the Thursday night game, whether it comes to the the running back, wide receiver, but especially the quarterback and tight end position, the defensives and the kickers. For those of you who are going to be playing, and I don't get to your question. Okay, so here's the thing. The Packers versus the Seahawks for Thursday Night Football, both on a short week. We'll know by tomorrow morning if Chris Carson's playing. I expect him to do so, and when he does, it's going to be a three-headed monster in that backfield, so be careful. By all means, be honestly careful, because at this point, oh my God. Thank you, bless my soul. As of right now, at this point in the season, I honestly have no clue who is going to be the number one running back in that backfield. You would expect, hey, you know what? Chris Carson's got a hip injury. That kid, that rookie right there that we drafted in the first round, just had 9 yards per carry. Get his ass in there, right? That's what you would expect. But that's not what's happening. We're sitting here, we're just waiting, and we're hoping. But as of right now, running back position, as of that team, that's a mess. Start them at your benefit / demise. On the other side, Aaron Jones must start. Get him in there. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, both great plays for this week against opposing defenses that aren't great against the pass. Both teams are trying to get into the playoffs. You know, we have let me see these records really quickly if I'm not mistaken. All right, let's go ahead and pull up. Excuse me, what the hell are you doing? All right, let's do that. Thank you. All right, so we have this week. Okay, are we not going to see a record? I'm depressed. What the heck? I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken, the Seahawks are 4-5. And on the flip side, if I'm not mistaken, what are the Green Bay Packers? They have to be they're like 3-5-1. Something like that. I think that's what they're at. 3-5-1, 4-1, something like that. Either way, both these teams still have potential at a wild card position. Now, where does that leave them? They're going to have to score a lot of points. They're going to get after it. You've seen my rankings on MVS and Davante Adams. I have a lot of confidence within the wide receivers of the Packers, and I have confidence in Tyler Lockett on the Seattle side. Doug Baldwin, on the other hand, unless he scores a touchdown, not really into it. When it comes to the tight ends, Nick Vannett, Jimmy Graham, sure. But honestly, if you don't have a better option, you have to start those guys. Plain and simple. If you have any questions on whether you should start, Jimmy Graham over a certain somebody, go into my Twitter, shoot me a message. That's the easiest way to get a response. Other than that, I think you should start both those quarterbacks. I think Aaron Jones is a must start. I think Chris Carson, if he plays, should start. The wide receivers, at least Davante Adams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Tyler Lockett. Those three receivers should play. Jimmy Graham should play. And the tight end could be started with somebody else. Anyway, I've been here for an hour. You've been listening for an hour. Thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, go down, click the subscribe button, and or click that like button if you're already subscribed. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Have a nice week. And we'll be back with the quarterback and tight end rankings tomorrow. I'll see you guys. Peace.